I got the weirdest phone call yesterday. I had just gotten Oliver off the bus. I'm in full mom mode. And I answer the phone because I have a listing. And so I'm thinking like, okay, it's a real estate agent or something calling me because I didn't recognize the number. And this woman was rattling off all this information saying she was calling on behalf of like Dark Wolf Solutions. I was like, I'm sorry, huh? She literally was saying like, can I speak to someone at your company that would possess like the DoD top security clearance, you know, that typically at like the top secret level or higher? I'm like, the fuck is happening right now? And she's like, you know, people that would like administer like polygraph tests and blah, blah. I'm like thinking it has to do with our podcast. I was like, well, did you just see I did like a true crime podcast and think like I was qualified for something? And
did you say that?
No, okay. But I was just like, who are you calling? And she's like, Danielle. And she said my maiden last name. And I was like, that's not my last name anymore. Like, that's my maiden name.
Right.
She's like, well, I found you on LinkedIn and that you're a project manager for this IT company for like top level, top security.
Are you?
No, I'm a secret agent on the side.
I mean, I have a lot of different job titles on LinkedIn because you never know when you need a job.
Listen, the amount of things I'm balancing right now of like full-time stay-at-home mom, real estate agent, and podcaster, like what the hell? I have no idea. Maybe I am. Maybe all of a sudden I am a project manager for an IT company working for like the Department of Defense. Who knows? So anyways, this poor girl, she was like genuine. It wasn't a telemarketer or anything. She's like, this is weird. I was like, you're telling me, sweetie. I have no idea.
Oh, she said this is weird?
Yes, she goes, this is weird.
What?
I was like, what do you think I feel like?
Yeah,
She's
this
like,
is fucking weird for me.
I got your phone number from like LinkedIn. Like the profile is connected to this phone number. So I did find the LinkedIn profile. There was a girl with my name, with my last name that was my maiden last name.
And your phone number?
I can't see, like I don't have like LinkedIn Premium. Like, I don't know. I don't use LinkedIn like that.
I don't
So
either.
yeah, I don't know how it is. I sent her a message that was like, hey girl, I hope you can just take a quick little break from your top security job and
Delete all my contact info.
yeah, can you please remove all of my contact info from your DoD top security clearance IT cybersecurity job? Thank you so much.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Isn't that so weird?
That's kind of scary though.
I know, I was a little freaked out.
What, did
out.
she respond?
No, not yet. She's too busy. She's got like a real job.
Oh my God, that is crazy.
Isn't it?
That is wild. Kind of scary.
Yeah.
Kind of scary because, truth be told, I've had my fucking shit stolen.
Yeah,
and,
you have.
And, like a lot. So
Yeah.
I would just maybe make that a priority to figure out. I would do a follow-up and then a follow-up to the follow-up.
Yeah, it's like, who do you go to though when it's like a cybersecurity company stealing your identity?
3, 2.
Hi, Dee.
Hi, Dee.
What is our drink today from your grandpa's little black book?
Today's custom cocktail recipe from my grandpa's cocktail book that he created when he owned a bar in Detroit in the 1940s is called the Hilty Dilty.
I love this
Which
name.
I'm like so here for this name. I don't know. I feel like it was giving me like Megan Hilty from Broadway and like Hilary Duff. I don't know.
Oh,
I was
yes. I love it.
Just like a combination. But
Yes.
anyways, it is supposed to be 1.5 ounces of apricot brandy, but I'm not a huge fan of apricot, so I just use regular brandy with a dash of orange flavoring because I like oranges better. And I know apricot is like kind of a peach, but whatever. And then I used a 1/2 ounce of lime juice and a 1/4 ounce of grenadine. Put it into a shaker and pour it into your favorite glass. And I felt like this one was deserving of a martini glass because of the name, and it's giving me that like really swanky vibe. And then I threw a little maraschino cherry on top, and so far this one's my favorite one. And I don't even like dark liquor because really I'm a tequila girly.
Yeah, I like dark liquor, but I have to shout out to my cup. It says True Crime Queen. So
I
this is
want
from
one.
Allie from Conductive Ed. She was
Oh my God, yeah.
yeah, Allie's my cousin Zach. He passed away almost
She's
2
honestly
years
the
ago.
best.
And Allie was his like very, very best friend, and she got me this actually a long time ago, I think for my birthday last year, and I have just not shown it on the podcast. But it was funny because the first time I used it, I was at like school pickup with this with like a big, I was like
With like a bloody stained title, True
and I was
Crime
like, ooh,
Queen.
I'm not gonna make friends. This is a red flag for a lot of moms. But thank you,
God.
Allie. I also have a shirt I have to wear, but I keep forgetting to wear it when we record.
I think it's time for us to get some Forensic Files Duo cups.
Yeah, we need some merch.
I think it's time.
Okay. Are you ready to get into it?
Let's go. Hi, everyone! Welcome to the Forensic Files Duo podcast, where we recap, review, and provide updates on the cases featured on the true crime TV show Forensic Files. I'm Drew, and I knew nothing about true crime until we started this podcast.
And I'm Danielle, and True Crime Raised Me.
If you're listening to us for the very first time and want to hear more about our friendship and how we became the Forensics Duo many moons ago, head over to episode 1 for the whole backstory. But real quick, we have been best friends since high school.
And he's been putting up with my shit since then. Okay.
And my shit, too. Divorces, cheating boyfriends.
Been a lot of shit, man.
Moving to different countries.
I was walking up the stairs with this big-ass light, and I'm like, did I ever think this was going to be us? We competed in an acting club called Forensics in the duo category, where you act out scenes from a play, nothing to do with forensic science at all.
But since everyone always thinks we were solving criminal cases in high school, and not just theater nerds, we're going with it. D squared is on this case.
I love it. Now for our regular disclaimer, we understand that we will be discussing a lot of sensitive topics, so although we may laugh at times, please remember that we are laughing at ourselves and ourselves only. We are not making light of what the victims and their families have gone through and may continue to be going through.
And in an effort to use the public's overall interest in the show Forensic Files and leverage the power of digital media, once the episode coverage is over, we will highlight a missing persons case.
So today's episode is listed on Wikipedia as Season 1, Episode 9, called Deadly Neighborhoods. And this episode, it kind of spurred on like a major discovery in my life.
Oh my god.
This is not what I expected it to be. I thought it said Deadly Neighbors, not Neighborhoods.
Right.
Okay, so first, it is a medical episode again. We are talking about children with cancer and people with brain tumors. And it may have given me the answers that I have been desperately searching for since I lost my first daughter at 20 weeks pregnant due to open neural tube defects. But before I get into that, if you have been listening to our episodes consecutively, you have heard me jokingly mention how the cases we've been covering have all very ironically been linked to my husband's birthday and other very specific dates in my family, like even my wedding anniversary. But Blake's birthday is like the one date that is consecutively coming up. And I think this might be like the fifth time it's been linked to a Forensic Files episode. And we're only like 18 episodes into their 406 total episodes.
Blake's birthday is in this episode?
It aired on November 21st, 1996, which is his 8th birthday. So I think
can't.
the sign that you were talking about in the last episode has revealed itself.
This is
through
too weird.
this.
This is like
I
giving me
know.
the chill. I have the chills right now. This is crazy.
I know. And it has been coming up since our very first episode.
Yeah,
so it's
every single
very
episode
weird.
there's been a connection.
Yeah, it's very, very weird. So if this topic is not what you were expecting to hear about on a true crime podcast and you need to pass on this one, I get it more than you know, because
Totally.
we are going to be discussing Superfund sites, and that is Superfund, F-U-N-D, not super fun at all. A Superfund site is a contaminated location in the United States that requires a long-term cleanup of hazardous substances and pollutants. These sites are designated under the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, which was enacted in 1980 to address toxic waste dumps and industrial pollution. Let's take a very quick history lesson because I just learned about the Love Canal disaster that happened in Niagara Falls, New York this past summer.
What?
So, yeah.
I was in Niagara Falls this past summer.
That's right, you were. Oh my God. Okay, so this is crazy, and I can't believe all the dots have finally connected because all summer I was listening to this series on one of my favorite podcasts called American Scandal. I will link it in the show notes. You have to listen to it. It's very, very, very good. So the podcast covers the main event that actually led to the creation of the Superfund Act in 1980, and it's everything that you like learn about in the podcast series. And what you hear is like, it was the moms who made this all happen. And they risked everything to create real change. In the 1940s and 50s, the Hooker Chemical Company, it's now part of Occidental Petroleum, they dumped over 21,000 tons of toxic chemical waste into an abandoned canal. The land was later sold to the Niagara Falls School District for $1.
That's a red flag.
Right? Despite warnings from Hooker about buried waste. Homes and schools were built on the site in the 1950s and 60s, and by the 70s, residents began experiencing health issues, including birth defects, miscarriages, high rates of cancer, and neurological problems. Chemicals like benzene, dioxins, and PCBs started leaking into basements and the local water supply. And while I originally said to Drew that I don't think I can do research on this episode, knowing it would most likely trigger my PTSD, and that's not hyperbole, I really am treated for that. When this episode ended, there was like no way in God's green earth my mind could not Google to learn more.
Right. It's like
I
WebMD.
couldn't. It turned a light on in my brain, and there was no way I could just take this episode for what they gave me, because they gave me nothing. So anyways, it led me to discover that for the past 4 years, during the years that I got pregnant and lost my first daughter, second child, to neural tube defects, I unknowingly lived 1 mile away from a Superfund site. That site was the Metamora Superfund site from Michigan.gov's website. The Metamora Landfill Superfund site, located in Metamora Township, Michigan, operated from 1955 until its closure in 1980 due to non-compliance with environmental regulations. During its operation, the landfill accepted both municipal and industrial waste, including approximately 35,000 drums containing hazardous materials. This has led to contamination of soil and groundwater in the area, and I lived on a well.
Oh my God.
It was Agent Orange. Hey, you've heard of Agent Orange, right?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
I mean, I just think there's a reason for everything, and there's a reason that we're doing this podcast, so
yeah,
this is
absolutely.
a big one.
This is a big one because it literally... My therapist said, I love my therapist. But
mental health is important, everyone.
Mental health is so important. And she was like, you've just found like a huge puzzle piece, like a huge missing puzzle piece, because I've always wondered, like, what did I do? What was wrong with my body? Yeah. And it's really, really weird. And my mind is kind of all over the place with it.
This episode takes place in 2 cities, Maryville in Phoenix, Arizona, and Guilford in Connecticut. Do we have any info on these cities at this time?
Yes. So Maryville, a neighborhood in West Phoenix, Arizona, in 1987, was a rapidly growing suburban area with a mix of working-class families and a strong sense of community. It was originally developed in the 1950s and 60s as one of the first master-planned communities in Phoenix, offering affordable homes to the middle-class residents. By the late 1980s, though, Maryville had started to experience some economic and social changes, and once we cover this episode, you will understand why. Okay, so the second town is Guilford, Connecticut, and in 1990, it was a classic, picturesque New England town with a blend of historic charm, coastal beauty, and a strong sense of community. Yeah.
Cute. And I'm sorry, is this real life? We are in season 1, and we are in color, people. It is so refreshing. We open with a scene where we learn that this Catholic elementary school in Phoenix, Arizona, 11 children contracted childhood leukemia, and 9 of those children unfortunately died. And then we learned that in Guilford, Connecticut, there were 5 cases with people who had brain tumors on a street with only 9 homes, with 2 towns and 2 cancer clusters. The investigation into these 2 neighborhoods had raised some much concern and urgency into this investigation.
Peter tells us that Arizona has always been known for its warm, dry climate and clean desert air. And all I can think about are coyotes.
What?
Honestly, when I went to visit my aunt and uncle in Arizona, I had my little Boston Terrier with me. And the stories they told me about little dogs there, I was like, how does anyone go outside ever? I truly don't understand.
Oh my God.
I was road tripping back to Georgia when I last saw them, when I last visited. And I headed out pretty early to get back on the road. So leaving their neighborhood, I saw 3 coyotes just like in their subdivision. I just knew that, and I was like, this is not the place for me. Nope. So we are told that the desert and farmland gradually have been transformed as the population moved west, and then so did development and industry. But along with that came new environmental problems. So we see what looks like a town hall meeting, and there's a mother with like a little infant babe in her arms, and she's asking this committee if they have a problem where they live and if she needs to be concerned. And she says,
"Are you saying no? In all honesty, not to protect your credentials, please."
And then we hear laughter from the crowd, and my heart sunk. It truly sunk to hear the laughter, because this is such a scary thing. And she's holding this little baby, wondering if she can keep this child safe or if it's at risk for, becoming deathly ill, because in her town, there has been an unusually high number of childhood leukemia cases in the Phoenix suburbs, specifically of Maryvale, between 1961 and 1985.
11 children attending St. Vincent de Paul's Catholic Elementary School developed acute lymphocytic leukemia, and 9 of those children died. Almost every grade had 2 classrooms, and it was a school that had a waiting list to even get into. Danielle and I totally get what this setting looks like because we both went to Catholic schools growing up, but I need to tell this Catholic scandalocious story that I have that I actually have never told anyone.
A Drew exclusive scandalocious story.
Yeah.
I'm so here for it.
Okay, so I'm in 7th grade, and 7th and 8th grade have their own building for the junior high. And mind you, in pretty much every grade, I had fantastic grades, like A's, high B's. But every single year, the only grade that I would have a C or D in was religion because ironically enough, I just couldn't get interested into reading the Bible and all this stuff. Now to find out, it was probably because I was gay and didn't know that I was. But so I was on forensics in grade school.
Me too.
Yeah.
Which is funny. We probably competed against each other. I hated your school.
Okay, well we won't mention my school because I'm not sure who's listening. But so for forensics, we had to stay after school for an hour or two. Mm-hmm. So I stayed a little bit longer, and then I was hanging out with my cousin and stuff, and then I had to go back into the building because I had to pee before leaving, and I went to go push on the boys' bathroom, and it was locked. And then I was like, I wonder if the girls' is open, and there was no one in the building, right?
Yeah.
I opened the door and turned the corner to where the stalls were, and there is my nun of a religion teacher making out with my female history teacher.
No.
And I stopped dead in my tracks. Mind you, these are really old women. I'm saying I would say probably 70s, maybe 80s. And she was so mean to me. When I tell you, she would slap the ruler on my desk because I wasn't paying attention.
Before or after you saw her?
Before. So then I went into the bathroom, literally stopped dead in my tracks because they didn't see me at first. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And then I was like, I'm just going to turn around. And then I ran out of the bathroom. And then I didn't know where to turn because do I go out this exit? Do I go that exit? And I just put my backpack on and walked really fast. And then my history teacher comes out of the bathroom and she's like, Drew. And I was like, yep. Oh, I gotta go. So sorry. And then I left, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do with this information? At this point, I didn't even know that I was gay yet. And I was like, I just saw 2 of my female teachers. One of them being the nun. And I knew
nuns and priests aren't allowed to also get married at least at that age.
And also I knew
simple,
that
but we all know
kind of homosexuality was a bit of a sin.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of touched base on that a little bit in junior high.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay.
Oh yeah, you were junior high, so yeah, for sure.
And I literally, my cousins went to this school, and I did not know what to do. I'm in 7th grade, right? So that's 12, 13. And
I think so.
Was young Drew in his head went home, and I was like, oh, I have got something on these teachers, and I will definitely go to the principal's office the next time I see my report card. And lo and behold, sister, not going to say her name, stopped picking on me. She then ended up saying, Drew, if you want, you can do some extra credit. It was draw a picture of the 12 disciples, and she would raise my grade up to an A when I had a C, and she fucking did. And I, to this day, learned my lesson of when something comes into your lap, you totally use that for leverage later on in life. I caught my sister,
your school nun,
making out hardcore. I'm it was intense, and it was so gross, and I was like,
Oh
Yeah, a little
my.
scandalocious Catholic school story.
Well, now back to this depressing piece of shit episode.
I just figured we should add some light
Yeah,
into
we
this
needed
episode
that. We
because-
needed that. Because buckle up, everybody.
Yeah, buckle up. Okay, so now with half the school shut down, people didn't want to send their children to the school anymore, which is clearly understandable.
Yeah.
What was even more alarming was in the neighborhood surrounding the school, there were 49 cases of childhood leukemia, which was 2.5 times higher than normal. We then meet Ramona Barrett, who lived in Maryville when her youngest daughter, Jessica, developed leukemia and died. And she says,
I thought it was maybe something I did while I was pregnant. And I would just rack my brain to think, what happened? What did I do? And I couldn't think of anything that I had done different than with my other 2 children. And, you know, I still don't know. And, I mean, it's always going to bother me the rest of my life.
And then we have to meet Sandy Matthews, where she thinks back to and remembers her son Josh and the 2-year battle that he had. And this one is truly heart-wrenching.
To sit and hold my child after a radiation treatment when, you know, he's just dry heaving and throwing up and you can feel his pain and there's nothing you can do, you know, to take that away. And that's what leukemia came to mean to us is, you know, watching a loss of life from somebody that was so alive.
So then we meet Norm Peterson from the Arizona State Health Department, who headed the investigation, and he tells us that at the start of every investigation, you try to find something that these people have in common. He then gives an example saying, for instance, if all their parents worked in the same factory, or if all their mothers had x-rays while they were pregnant. More on that later, guys. So they do this to determine if this is a true cancer cluster or a random occurrence. So that last part feels a little too like gaslighty to me, because like it's a cluster. Like whether or not you can tell us why, it's a cluster, right?
Clearly,
you know, it's
clearly
like,
a cluster.
So here are the stats we're given circa 1996. And do you remember the game Life? Remember that game? It was a board game.
I couldn't
with, like,
play it.
Why?
It's like Monopoly for me. It was just too long of a game.
I was obsessed with the game Life. I just loved it. But this like graphic that we see of the little houses and they all light up, it reminded me instantly of that board game. Okay, so we had these little life houses, and this graphic here, it kind of reminds me too like of like a city planning of like The Simpsons. But anyways, they say that the average rate of cancer in a city is 1 in every 10 households. So for example,
shocking.
yeah, right? So we assume that the distribution of those cancers will be more or less equal, but if it isn't and the same number of cancer cases happen in a group or cluster, scientists try to figure out if it's because of chance or if there's a reason for the cluster. Why can't anyone just say, we just don't know, sorry. Like science and technology hasn't gotten there. We don't have the answers for you.
Right.
Because the rate of childhood leukemia in Maryville was higher than it should have been. Obviously, Peter, like, we know all this. Thank you so much. Obviously, like, that's why we're all here, right? So
I think they filled the episode too with him saying that exact sentence at least like 6 or 7 times.
Oh my gosh, seriously. And I'm like, are we, like, is this a joke on us? I just get more and more frustrated as this episode goes on, so I apologize. So the residents first suspected that it was pollution. And there's a very, very angry mom with a big old poster board saying, we know there are studies that show that benzene does cause childhood leukemia. Benzene comes from gasoline. And here's the kids area. And here's the area where the kids are. And here's the area where the kids have been dying of leukemia. And then here is the gas storage facility. Then she says, do you think this is a coincidence? No, ma'am, I do not. However, what the episode is not saying is that there is major contamination just blocks away from these people. So I'm kind of like losing it right now. Like, how is this real life? I just don't understand like how I'm like waiting. I'm waiting for them to get to it because you know your girl's already started Googling. Like I'm watching the first 5 minutes and I'm like, what do I have to expect? So I'm like watching and Googling and I'm like, but then like Forensic Files just continues to go and go and go.
Doesn't do anything.
And it doesn't tell me anything. And I'm like, but wait, what about all this information that's like readily available? Okay. So then Forensic Files and Norm are like fucking wasting our time showing us a farm near the cluster site that was suspected of leaking benzene into the atmosphere from fertilizer and pesticides. And yes, benzene has been linked to leukemia, but apparently not the type found in Maryville. Honestly, I'm taking everything they are saying though right now with like the tiniest grain of salt.
And it's crazy because it's only like maybe 5 minutes in and we already have come to this conclusion.
I know, exactly.
God.
So here we go. In 1983, Motorola reported a leak from a 5,000-gallon underground storage tank. I'm telling you, this is not in the episode, you guys. This is what I was finding simultaneously. The episode doesn't even touch on this. So they found it in the courtyard area, and they found that it was containing TCA. This is a chemical solvent that was widely used for degreasing metal parts, cleaning electronics, and as a component in household and industrial products like adhesives and aerosol sprays. TCA is classified as an ozone-depleting substance, and it can contaminate groundwater if improperly disposed of, persisting in the environment and potentially impacting drinking water supplies.
Let's go over some facts that we have learned from researchers. For cancer to develop, two things must happen. First, a cell becomes damaged in some way by an inherited defect or by something like radiation, a virus, or even, no surprise here, a chemical. Then has to activate that cell. And chemicals that they reference are like the chemicals in cigarette smoke or pollution. What's the result after that? Those cells will then multiply out of control, creating junk piles of abnormal cells, aka tumors.
So childhood leukemia tends to cluster, and this dude is here with like no lower third to tell us like who he is or why he is qualified to talk on this subject. They don't have any lower thirds for anybody, but sometimes they actually give us names, and this guy got no introduction at all.
Still don't know who he is.
Still no clue who he is, but he has glasses on to look smart. But he tells us that there have been many leukemia clusters with children described in literature. But what causes a large number of leukemia cases to cluster in like a small neighborhood such as Maryville is unknown, aka, again, they have no fucking idea. So Norm Peterson is back to gaslight us and tell us about the detailed questionnaires that they sent to families of the cancer victims. They tested the St. Vincent de Paul School and went out and did a radiation survey to see that there hadn't been, for instance, some radioactive material incorporated into the structure of the school. Again, why are we not even mentioning Motorola or Honeywell or the other companies that had leaks of their chemicals? All of that is happening at the same time all around this area.
Because they're major corporations.
Because they're major corporations. And I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I am starting to think, y'all, that it's not like that red dye 40 or cereal that we need to be getting loud about. If I didn't already have like a good idea of what all of this means because of like looking into all of this when I was pregnant with Holland, my daughter, I could very easily see how finding this information out could radicalize someone like really fast. But instead of putting their efforts into the possibility that it could be the air filtration system at St. Vincent de Paul that could maybe likely make VOCs in the area more hostile, they're just looking at farms and the electrical power lines and the walls of the school for radiation. Okay, cool. But so you're telling me there's like literal chemicals in your ground that can be turned and vaporized, and that depending on the certain air filtration that certain buildings have, that can increase the likelihood of being toxic. If I am missing something that like a researcher or scientist listening, which I'm pretty sure you have way better things to do with your time, but someone with like legit credentials like could please break this down for me, because I'm like having a bit of like a mental crisis over this. I don't understand what I'm missing.
I'm really surprised that like Forensic Files, aka medical detectives, did this episode because there are no answers to anything. So why would you put this as like public knowledge if you're not going to provide facts to anything?
Yeah, I know.
It's that was like the biggest mind-blowing thing for me.
Me too.
During this episode, because I'm like holding out hope like towards the end of the episode, maybe. Well, spoiler alert, it doesn't get better.
No.
Does not.
No, it doesn't.
So some residents actually remembered contaminated wells that were closed by the city a few years prior to all of this happening.
The block I grew up on was right smack in the middle of it. It's, looking back, it's very scary, to think that we lived with this. And, why?
But again, that's not why they were closed. It wasn't from the insecticides. It was from the chemical contamination from the companies. And now I'm just wondering, like, were Motorola and Honeywell like somehow sponsors of Forensic Files? Because now I'm like turning into a conspiracy theorist. Like, were they like, hey, put this episode out so everyone can get super scared of farmland and electrical wires and take the attention off of the companies? I'm like, because this is just like getting weirder and weirder.
So the citizens of Maryville wanted answers as to what was causing the insanely extremely high rates of childhood leukemia at this Catholic elementary school and in the surrounding neighborhood. When you hear these numbers, it's actually alarming. This cancer cluster took the lives of 32 children and hospitalized 17 others.
I don't even know when we went from 11 to like
know.
32.
I know.
Or no, it
jumped.
was like 9 had passed away, and now we're at 32.
Just like low key, they just mentioned it.
Yeah,
Like,
they didn't even,
not like
they weren't even like telling us like progressively it got worse. It just literally jumped from 11 with leukemia, 9 passed away, and now we're at 32 or have passed away.
We then hear from a very frustrated, as she should be, mother when she says this.
You wanted to run away, but then you wanted to move, sell out. Let's go away. Let's go somewhere else. But you have children who have lives. You have jobs. You have a home. You just cannot walk away from everything.
Parents were beyond irritated because they just felt that everywhere they turned for answers, they got nowhere. This rate of cancer cases was more than twice what it should have been at that time, and the residents were desperate to know what the state medical detectives were doing about it.
I want to mention what this local man says about his faith, and I want to bring something up about Catholicism.
This absolute, what I would consider destruction of faith, even with the church. Your children are in a Catholic school. You know, you're a practicing Catholic. You think, wow, well, if nothing else, Bishop O'Brien will stand there and say, well, maybe we better do something.
Being a Catholic, and I'm not sure, Drew, if you will agree with me.
I can already feel like I'm going to.
I feel like there's an unspoken exclusivity with being a Catholic. I never even realized until I was older and saw like a lot more of the world that being a Catholic like was part of Christianity.
Right, me either, until I grew up.
Yeah, I thought Christians were a different religion.
Same.
And I was a Catholic.
Same.
Yeah. And it's like we are the right faith.
Right, I was just about to say, because
and
you're taught
everyone
like,
else
it's the best
is confused.
religion. Yeah.
Yes, like we're in this exclusive club that we got the secrets to life, and everyone else is a little like lost and they have to find their way.
The only thing Catholicism has that other religions don't is you get to exercise during services because you're going down and up from a pew to a whatever you call those things, kneeler things, and then you're up standing up and you're doing it at least 20 times. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess you get to exercise. Like, never looked at it that way. You get your Sunday workout in. I mean, literally, I think that's the only thing that they have to offer besides thinking that they're the best religion in the world. But
So funny. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Okay.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're so right. So when I heard this man talking about like his destruction of faith, I 1000% got it. Like what he's saying here is I was taught that I was doing life and religion right. You know, I sent my kids to Catholic school. I was a devout Catholic and like we should be protected from this kind of unjust, unexplainable tragedy. But then like he says like, but then even our bishop wouldn't show up for us, you know? And it's like, yeah, when that happens and you're left to question like what you were taught all this time and what you thought you believed all this time is proven to like almost like not matter in the face of an illness. I'm
Right.
sorry, Catholics, unfair shit can happen to you too. No matter how many kneeling exercises you
Right.
do and you get your steps in.
to walk down that long aisle to get a little cracker.
And a little bit of
you know?
alcohol. Take a shot. Then after these heartfelt statements from these parents, Peter gets our hopes up when he says, state epidemiologists reviewed the test results of St. Vincent de Paul's school. They learned some shocking information. And here I thought, oh my God, they're going to get answers. He says the air quality and the drinking water levels of pesticides and radiation were all within state and federal safety levels. Not only were they at safe levels, they were even lower levels than what was found in other schools and neighborhoods. So can we confirm what those levels are? Like how, like no one's going to tell us what those levels are or how the government established that this is the safe level. Who are these test subjects that determined?
Should we change those levels?
Maybe those
because of
levels
what's
aren't
going on?
correct. Are
You
we
know?
going to take a minute of
Right.
self-reflection? Nope. We're just moving on. Because up until just recently, like most research studies have been done on adult male bodies. I don't know if you know this, Drew. And even the average like sleep hours that we were told that like we all averagely need, that like on average, this is what you need to sleep per night. That was for men.
Mm-hmm.
Women actually need about 8 to 10 hours for balancing hormones. And we just started actually studying like the female body. So like when it comes to like what is safe for pregnant women, what is safe for levels for a elementary school, what is safe for an infant baby, I feel like this is like getting even more arbitrary because like no one that's pregnant or has a child is going to be like, yes, you know what, let me and my unborn child be your guinea pig, or you know what, put my children in that study and put those chemicals in their school or in their air. So like someone please just tell me like what are safe levels? How did we establish safe levels? I need some context. So we're told again that like the nearby wells, which had been contaminated, were closed years earlier and weren't used for drinking water. But the drinking water for Maryvale was tested and found to be safe. So does anyone care to elaborate, Forensic Files? No? No? So you're going to tell me that they were contaminated and closed years before, but we're not going to elaborate. So all we get is that Peterson, our dude Norm, and his staff investigated the local industries from two aspects: sources of air pollution and an inventory of what they were releasing. But they could identify that no toxins in amounts that could be linked with excess cancers. No, sorry, like that's not good enough. That's not even a real answer.
Peterson was concerned that he might never actually be able to find the cause of the cancer cluster. He then tells us that cancer doesn't leave a fingerprint or clue of any kind as to what caused it, and unlike other illnesses, leukemia patients produce no antibodies to the cancer-causing agent. We then learn that it's even worse for children who have leukemia because children produce absolutely no antibodies to anything. I just literally keep finding myself hearing this, and every single time this episode keeps going on, I'm finding myself getting more and more frustrated, and I think I wanted to like flip over my laptop at least 20 times during this. But let's leave it to our helpful but not so helpful environmental epidemiologist, and he tells us this.
There is nothing that says that leukemia is caused by radiation as opposed to being caused by benzene, as opposed to being caused by electromagnetic fields.
But Peterson decided to examine the homes where the cancer victims lived. Air dust, water, pesticides, heavy metals, and radiation from appliances were all tested to see if these homes differed in any way from others. But again, it was a dead end. After 10 years and over $2 million worth of investigation, the Arizona state officials couldn't find anything they could link to the cause of the cancer cluster. $2 million is about 5.6 mil in today's money, and that was over the course of 10 years, and still no answers. So the residents of Maryvale weren't satisfied, rightfully so.
Obviously,
yeah. Norm then says something about there being a lot of distrust of government, and a lot of it is justified, and for the public to not trust us should not come as a surprise. Well, Norm, if everyone was a little bit more transparent about the problem and validating the problem with common sense, I think people would change their positions on that. Because what is weird is I started lining up the dates of my research and this episode, and just kind of like when people started getting loud about this. And right as the cleanup initiatives start in this area, the cancer cluster stops.
What a coinkydink.
Is it also a coincidence that only after the area is deemed a Superfund site, the groundwater treatment systems are installed to remove the TCE and other contaminants, and companies were responsible for the pollution are ordered to fund the cleanup efforts, and Phoenix transitions to using surface water sources to prevent exposure to contaminated groundwater, that now all these problems are poof, gone? No, it's not a coincidence. And that is the research I found. That is, again, not in the episode.
And I was thinking, I didn't put this in my notes, but this kind of did make me think of the Flint water thing that happened.
Yeah.
And how it was like a really big deal for like 2 days, and then it all went away. But that was like a major, major problem, and it was a governmental issue.
Yeah, and there's still issues with it. They're still replacing the copper like pipes and stuff in certain homes. And
well, I'm sitting here with this frustrated feeling that I'm sure isn't even as close as the feeling of those residents and family members had, because it just sounds like they're giving up on this humongous problem by just saying that, yep, I think it's gone. Like, what? But then we do hear the medical investigators try to put what the situation is into words for us to understand how frustrating and difficult this was for them.
Imagine what would happen, for example, if you had an automobile accident, and instead of your bone breaking right away, it broke 30 years later. Right? And then when confronted with somebody with a broken bone, you had to think back over all the other things that might have happened to them over the intervening 20 or 30 years.
So here's where it gets even more odd, because in another town thousands of miles away, there was another cancer cluster developing in Guilford, Connecticut.
It was on this dead-end road, Meadow Street in Guilford, Connecticut, which is, by the way, one of the places that inspired Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls. Anyways, we learn that this is a working-class neighborhood about a 2-hour drive outside of New York City. And out of 9 homes on this street, there had been 5 brain tumor cases. We meet Bob Penstock, who is such a protector. He heard of this unusually high number of brain tumors, and he was alarmed for his son and his granddaughter who lived on Meadow Street. Residents were convinced that they knew the cause of this high rate of cancer. They blamed the electrical substation, and this substation takes up one side of Meadow Street, and it sits only about 100 feet away from the closest houses. Now, remember when our buddy Norm threw out the possibility of the mothers of the children with leukemia possibly all having x-rays done while they were pregnant? Well, that's because x-ray machines emit high-frequency ionizing radiation, and that is known for a fact to cause cancer. So this is my plug for everyone to read the book Radium Girls. It is such an informative story. I've linked it in the show notes, of course, and I just think everyone should read it. Like, it should be mandatory reading in schools. It just explains so much, and you learn so much about like why we have certain regulations, what certain chemicals and reactive things that are radioactive can do to our bodies. It is, again, it's a bunch of women and mothers that get loud and get angry and they make change.
I actually think this is being made into a musical.
It is.
Yeah.
There was originally a play.
Yeah.
So I think that they're turning into a musical. Yeah. I have told so many, I'm like such a nerd about this story. I love it. I have it on an audiobook. It is such a good story. Go learn about it. It's so important to learn about. So those are X-ray machines. They emit the high frequency ionizing radiation. So we learned though that electrical substations, they emit low frequency non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation. And so if anyone's like a little lost right now, these are the stations that power your cities and towns. You'll see like a cluster of these behind a fence. They're like those gray metal box looking things. Sometimes they're like much taller. The bigger the substation, the bigger the boxes. So they are also like the residential power lines into homes. And this one is described as like a big noisy neighbor to the residents of Meadow Street. And Peter tells us that the high levels of electromagnetic energy that these substations give off even frightens scientific researchers. So now we meet my favorite woman of this episode, Dr. Reba Goodman.
Here's where we find out about good old Reba Goodman, the only person in this whole damn episode that is upfront and honest about the answers scientists just cannot answer yet. So she is a cell biologist at Columbia University, and she conducted research to see if electromagnetic fields can change our cells, which in return makes them more susceptible to cancer.
And the whole problem is to find the range within which these fields have an effect at the cellular level.
Paul Broder from the New Yorker magazine came forward and wrote that he suggested that the electromagnetic fields from this substation might be responsible for the illnesses caused on Meadow Street.
Moving quickly now, we meet Jack Walston, who grew up on Meadow Street, and when he married and started a family, he bought a house just down the street from his parents. But he blames the electrical substation for the death of his entire family.
It's crazy.
His father died of a brain tumor at the age of 54, and then his sister died at the age of 54, and doctors removed a brain tumor from the front of Jack Walston's head when he was just 35 years old. You can even see the scar in the interview. And he apparently had like the largest in the history of the hospital, and he's had a recurrence of it. And then he tells us about Melissa Bullock, who was Jack Walston's next door neighbor, and she was a high school basketball star, straight A student. She also developed a brain tumor at the age of 16, which required surgery and radiation treatment, but she survived. I actually wasn't expecting to hear that she survived because the way they introduced her pictures and stuff, it was more of like a memorial for her.
Agreed.
But she's not here to be interviewed. So when they said that, I was like, wait, I like literally rewound it and made sure I heard that right.
Yeah.
And in 1987, the local newspaper did a little investigation of its own and discovered this startling number of cancer cases, not only around the electrical substation, but along the entire length of the high power lines throughout the state. Jack said he could give you name after name of people who lived along the power lines that have died with cancer of some type from one street to another. The electric company acknowledged that the levels of electromagnetic radiation are high at the substation itself, but that they should drop off significantly further the further away you are. I mean, yeah, no shit.
We then meet Bob Carberry, this guy instantly pissed me off. He is the manager of transmission lines and civil engineering for the power company that is in charge of this transmission on Meadow Street. He weighs in with this.
The levels that I've observed on Meadow Street due to power facilities are quite common. If there was a real problem here, it should be showing up in more places than Meadow Street.
In my opinion, this just frustrated me even more because clearly you can see that this is a huge problem. And it just seems that they don't want to admit that this is actually a huge fucking issue. Probably because, like, a power company doesn't want to admit that they're in the wrong. The power company still stands by the fact that the levels of radiation near Meadow Street falls in a normal range. And you already said this, but I said it later on in my notes, but I'm like, okay, so these levels need to be reevaluated because clearly it's a problem, right? It's super fucked up, but I just don't know how much more I can get frustrated in this episode.
I know.
Peter tells us something I actually never knew about, but that radiation exists in nearly every home in the United States. This radiation is caused by electrical wiring appliances such as microwaves and even electrical razors, two things that I both have. And I do remember hearing something about like microwaves when I was younger, and I think I felt the reason like you couldn't go too close to it was because it was gonna like blow up or something. But now I know that it's because of fucking radiation, which is super frightening. Just gonna use an air fryer. But the electromagnetic radiation from a substation is actually constant, and it sounds a bit alarming to me that this is consistently happening every day. Like I didn't think that we were exposed to radiation on a daily basis. Did you?
Yeah.
You knew that?
Did. Yeah, I knew that honestly, I knew that because when I lost Clara, I went down a huge rabbit hole of like what everything is, what all of these like toxins are, and I learned that a lot of things are just naturally in our atmosphere. Like a lot of things just exist that we are exposed to. And there are things...
But not told about.
Not told about, but they just like exist naturally. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not just like a microwave. Like, radiation does just exist naturally in our, like, planet.
But you, like, think when you hear, like, when I hear the word radiation, like, my brain instantly goes to, like, Chernobyl or, like, something, like, crazy like that. And I never knew that we were consistently being exposed to it.
We are. Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah, now my, like, hypochondriac ass is gonna literally just, like, fall off. Like, thank you for this podcast because I can't tell you the amount of stress that I now have in my life, but...
Tell me about it.
Yeah, oh God. So, the residents of this small street obviously weren't convinced that their neighborhood was safe, and they wanted answers to all of this due to the high number of brain tumors. These anxious residents went to the town hall for a public meeting next, to see if the electric substation was the cause of this. But once again, they were pissed because they were met with no solution from the health officials. I mean, look at the facts. There were 5 brain tumors on a street with only 9 homes. Here is where I get pissed, because they said since the tumors were different, they didn't qualify as a cancer cluster because 2 of them were benign. This, to me, again, just seems like a big crock of shit.
Hey Siri, define cluster.
A group of similar things or people positioned or occurring closely together.
Hey Siri, define cancer.
A disease caused by an uncontrolled division of abnormal cells in a part of the body.
Okay. Hey Siri, define cancer cluster.
A group of people in a specific geographic area who have an unusually high number of cases of the same type of cancer over a defined period.
Oh, fuck off. That's a trick answer. So to define this cancer cluster, you have to have the same type of cancer.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay, so because the brain tumors, they weren't all the same type, you don't classify it as a cluster. Okay, I'm still so confused. It literally goes against like the definition. Okay, whatever. So one of the brain tumors that stands out is Melissa Bullock's, who we met, who did survive. And that was Jack's neighbor, because it has been linked to be caused by electromagnetic fields. So then our fierce grandpa Bob is back, and he says,
I defy any one of them to change places with those people on Meadow Street and bring their family there. And I'll guarantee you not one of them would do that.
But now they tell us that researchers have found modestly higher rates of cancer, including leukemia and brain cancer, among workers who are exposed to electromagnetic fields in their jobs. One study found that welders have significantly higher rates of cancer because of their exposure to radiation. So now I'm like, what are you telling us, guys? Because you keep confusing me. And all of a sudden, like, we're on board. We're like on board that it causes this. Because now the no-named smart dude with glasses is back. He still has no lower third telling me his name or why he's here. And he says that there is more epidemiological evidence for the relationship between cancer and magnetic fields today than there was when we accepted that there was a relationship between asbestos and cancer, which is like we all have accepted that there is a connection between those two. So there is more evidence today of a relationship between these EMFs than asbestos. All right, so we're still in the same breath. He's telling us that other studies have been inconclusive. I'm done. Like, I'm honestly, I'm so confused. We are being ping-ponged back and forth. So then he says one reason why this is controversial and why so many scientists have refused to accept the epidemiological evidence is because there is no obvious biological mechanism that proves that the magnetic fields can cause cancer, which is what I have been saying this whole time. Because they don't know how to prove it yet does not mean it's safe, okay? And they are just not saying that they don't know. They're saying all these words going back and forth when all they're saying actually at the end of the day is that they don't know how to prove it yet. And those two things, safety and not knowing, are not synonymous with each other. Like, I don't understand why I'm the one having to say this. Like, I don't know.
I mean, they did a good job at confusing me because, I mean, like, they said a lot of big words that I didn't know what they meant. And I was like, oh,
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So then my girl, Dr. Reva Goodman, is here as the only logical one in this industry, it seems. And she tells us that it's not the level of electromagnetic radiation one is exposed to, but the number of times an individual passes through the fields. And people are exposed intermittently as they go in and out of these fields for different lengths of time. And laboratory data has shown that these kinds have a synergistic effect.
But the fact is that until we understand how these things affect cells, we're just not going to know.
That makes total sense.
Right.
Thank you. Because honestly, I could just listen to her talk and be like, no, exactly. No, that makes sense.
And she's not on board. Like, she's fucking pissed, too.
Right.
So, like, but she's got facts. Like, she came with receipts.
Exactly. And, like, what she says is, like, look, there is a lot that we don't know, but the only fair approach to this is for people to actually be protected, is to acknowledge that we don't know. Acknowledge the possible dangers, and that there is a possibility that it's not safe, yet we don't exactly know why or how we're seeing these signs. Maybe we should actually just take precautions and care about people more than like building a house right there, more than selling more property to get more property taxes from homeowners. It is so just heartless and cruel to be giving the general public a false sense of safety.
Because if they don't, then it creates chaos, and then they're even more fucked. So they think this is the right way.
Yeah, and it's lost profits, right? It's lost profits for the construction builders and the property taxes, and around we go.
And I do honestly feel like after watching her in this episode, she again is like the only person out of the other people that I don't even know who they are because their names are not given, that I would trust with the facts that she is delivering, because she has been studying the effects of these electromagnetic fields for more than 15 years. So she knows what she's fucking talking about. She then says this, which is very interesting, but also really alarming fact.
We don't know whether electromagnetic fields cause cancer. The most likely thing that they do is that they may promote cancer. That is, if the cell or the body is in contact with some environmental toxin, and they are also getting some kind of EM field, These two things together could cause cancer, and this has been shown in animal studies.
See, she even gives us her sources. She speaks my language. Bless this woman. Although I'm like, okay, you tested it on animals. Like,
well, the residents of Meadow Street were now in an even more difficult situation because local health officials never said magnetic fields didn't cause cancer, but what they did say was all that they can say is that it hasn't been proven to be true. I feel like we're just being fed the same excuses back to back from
this is the definition of gaslighting, right? Like,
yes.
I'm pretty sure.
I honestly, like, it took me a long time in my adult life to understand what gaslighting meant.
I remember.
And then after being, like, in a relationship with someone who was a narcissist and gaslighting me all the time, I still didn't accept it.
Boo! Shots fired. Shots fired.
I know exactly what it is. So if anything from this episode I'm taking is that I finally understand what gaslighting is, so thank you. But they then drop this next line where I feel like if I was a resident at this current time concerned with what was going on, I'd be fucking pissed because this does not help at all.
Our conclusions as a Department of Public Health were that we didn't see a cluster of cases that could be identified as from a common cause. But by the other same token, we couldn't say that they couldn't be related to electromagnetic fields or the electrical substation.
Again, it sounds like she was just saying a lot of words with a really bad haircut and frizzy hair for no reason at all, to just confuse us, to make us think that she knows what she's talking about, aka a very PC way of saying, I know what I'm talking about regarding something I don't know actually anything about and I can't give any answer to. Ugh. Well, poor Jack Wilston is back, and I've been feeling for him this whole episode, but when he says this, it just makes my heart hurt so bad because his whole family ended up having some form of cancer. Coincidence? I think not, but he then tells us his final opinion.
I don't feel it's a natural thing for the cases in as many homes as there was, and I never will feel as though it's a natural thing.
Peter drops some real drama on this next part by saying,
2 cities, 2 cancer sites, and 2 unsolved medical mysteries.
Public health officials can offer few answers for the residents of Meadow Street and Maryville, Arizona, and with the lack of definitive information, the result is usually fear and anger. And wow, he nailed it here because this is all I'm feeling throughout this whole episode.
Absolutely. And at the end, he says that over the past 22 years, the CDC has investigated over 108 cancer clusters throughout the United States and around the world. He says that it is the premier medical investigative agency, and I chuckled because, oh, Peter, if you only saw what the country has turned into, you would be appalled because that is not something everyone agrees
would he?
with.
Because, I mean, I would not want to even be a narrator on this type of episode.
Right?
Because,
could you imagine putting this out in 2020 or 2025 with no answers post-COVID? Like, people would lose it.
Part of me is like having the hope that the reason they did this episode would make people get frustrated and ask questions. That's where, like, I'm hoping.
Okay, but why not call out the companies?
Well, maybe because they don't want to legally say anything, but they're hoping people will get fucking pissed like we were,
maybe,
and do research and then just cause chaos. I mean, obviously that's the biggest hope in the world, but
right, because I do feel like cases like this and episodes like this, I feel like they only feed conspiracy theories and they radicalize people. And he says that after investigating hundreds of similar cases, the CDC has never been able to find cause for a single cancer cluster. My jaw is on the floor. I can't believe this.
But you know what? We can define what a cluster is and what qualifies to be in a cluster.
And what's not a cluster, it's not the definition of cluster.
Oh, God. We should definitely mention the fact that, ironically enough, on our Spotify account, someone actually commented on our last episode if we were actually going to be covering this episode.
Yeah, they asked if we were going to cover this case because it's never been solved. And I was like, yeah, but I got more information that the episode did not even talk about.
Well, we hope we can deliver some resolution for whoever this person is that's asking for us to do this.
I mean, no, because I looked it up and the CDC still has to this day, almost 20 years later to the date of the airing of this episode, has still not ever solved the case.
Are there any updates with this? I'm hoping so.
So this is honestly all I got, is that as of now, Maryville, their groundwater cleanup continues, but plumes of contamination remain. In 2021, a new toxic groundwater plume was identified. So in 2024, the EPA proposed a $14 million plan to continue remediation efforts. And while there is no current evidence of a brain tumor cluster in Guilford, individuals seeking more detailed information or concerned about cancer rates in their area can contact the Connecticut Tumor Registry, and that is at 860-509-7163. So now that's all I got about those two locations, and that's very disappointing. Because I loved Dr. Reba Goodman so much, I had to look her up. Of course I did. I found her quoted in an article that I linked in the show notes, and the article is titled Understanding EMF Exposure and Its Health Impacts, and it was published in 2022. And I didn't find an obituary. So I think Dr. Reba Goodman is still alive.
Reba, if you're listening,
out God's work.
We want to talk to you.
I know. I love Dr. Reba. She is such a badass. Yeah. There's articles about her being a woman in a man's world. Like,
and
it's
she had
just,
that Jamie Lee Curtis haircut. I was here for it.
Oh, she is like so fierce. I love her. Okay, so she says that 25 years ago, EMF exposure was comparatively low. Today, our bodies are bombarded with EMFs from all sides, day and night, virtually everywhere we go. So, Drew, this kind of like goes along with like the realization you learned about being around radiation. The long-term effect of this relatively sudden flood of ever-increasing EMF exposure has not been well studied and may have many unintended consequences. So with more people now working from home, connecting via online web services, and using more wireless technology, we are more exposed than ever before. However, few people are questioning the health implications of this technology and are just going about their business as usual, usually feeling, grateful for the conveniences. And in that article, they review the many ways in which EMFs can harm your health and then provide like ideas for protecting yourself. So it's definitely a very interesting perspective, that article. I love it. So I want to start talking about this because this episode shook my world this week in a lot of ways. Especially with what happened in my second pregnancy and to my second child. You can find multiple studies that say contaminants and Superfund sites are related to things like cancer, birth defects, and other chronic illnesses when you live within a mile of these sites, which I just found out 2 days ago.
It's wild.
That I did for 4 years. But then there is like this one study that was done in Texas that concludes that living near these sites does not statistically show an increased risk, specifically for pregnant women regarding things like neural tube defects, which is exactly what my daughter had. And then I see at the bottom in the conclusion area, it states that there's a slightly elevated risk if they're living near a toxic release inventory facility, which, I mean, that's kind of a given for sure. If you're living near a facility that says it's releasing toxic material. But then the next sentence reads, further investigation is needed to determine if the effects are real or due to unsolved confounding. I had no idea what unsolved confounding was. A lot of big words. So I looked it up, right? And it refers to a situation in research where an unmeasured factor influencing both the independent and dependent variables remains unaddressed, meaning something we haven't discovered yet could potentially lead to inaccurate or misleading conclusions about a relationship between something like a toxin and a disease. If that's confusing, what they're saying here is that further investigation is needed here because there's a lot of room for error.
But why even say that at all? You know what I mean? Like, why even say that this is not a problem?
Why say that it's not a problem? Right. And that's where I'm so angry because it's misleading in my opinion. I think that is extremely misleading to put that out there when you know there's this like potential big factor that you haven't discovered yet.
Well, read all the words on every single document and the small print on everything because the answers could potentially be there, but they're not having you look at them.
At the end of all of this, these private companies fucked us over. They have contaminated our land for profit. And this is why regulations are essential for private companies. This is why we need that checks and balances because now they have ruined property values in some of these areas. And in an attempt to preserve them, like in areas that I just moved out of, we're just like cool with making people think that they are completely safe, that they can still live here. Where in reality, the answer is just, one giant like hands up IDK emoji. Like, like there is no real answer. There is no real like you are completely safe. We know you are. Like, and this goes to exactly what you said. Why is there no law requiring that there's some kind of disclosure when a buyer is considering living on or near once heavily contaminated land, that these chemicals that we know are not biodegradable are in our soil? The land that I used to live on was contaminated before I was even born. And now the government just wants like this whole generation to what? Hope they don't watch a fucking Forensic Files episode that then causes them to go down a rabbit hole of research to then discover that I lived within a mile of an Agent Orange contaminated land, where then I gave birth to 2 babies and like one dead and one is living. I just don't like what. I made my children's bottles with that water that came from the ground. So now I'm worried about like them having long-term side effects from living there. This is not like how a local resident should find something like this out. I should have had a choice in the matter. I should have had a choice of whether I was willing to accept the risk.
You should be given the choice.
I should be given the choice. The information, there should be some liability on the state to disclose.
Because don't you, as a real estate agent, also have to disclose if a person has died in the house?
It's certain states. Not all states have that law.
Wild.
Yeah. Not all states have that law. But, like, if I have to disclose that I had bats in my fucking attic, then you should tell me that there's a fucking chemical in my ground.
Or squirrels in the walls.
Yeah, I've had to disclose, like if there's been water in my basement. Well, if there's water in my basement, what about the chemicals in my soil? Or what about the Agent Orange that, when you're pregnant, a fetus is like a magnet and it absorbs everything. If you hear about the Chernobyl stories, you'll hear about women that were pregnant when that happened and their baby absorbed all the radiation and they were fine. And it's just part of nature, and we know this. So we cannot be telling people that you are safe just because they don't completely have the answers figured out.
Like, I have a question. So, like, if you moving forward knowing that this happened, and, like, if you did get told this, would you, I mean, obviously you wouldn't have moved to Metamora.
No.
Right.
Absolutely not, especially for the fact that I had a son with a heart defect.
Right.
And the 2 defects were completely different. There was no medical answer out there as to why both of my children had birth defects. But a heart defect that is a plumbing issue is very common. It's 1 in 100. His was a little rare, but it was like a hiccup in development.
Right.
An open neural tube defect is a completely different animal, and it is not related in the slightest, and it is completely horrendous of like the condition that my child was in, and it made no sense. It made absolutely no sense. I will, of course, never, ever, ever let anyone I am representing in any way, I will not disclose this. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I am representing someone as a buyer's agent, you better believe I'm going to make them aware to look up every home. Because you can look up on the EPA site there are 91 sites in Michigan, for example, and it's actually one of the states with the highest number of sites because of how many industries were here. And like, I guess Dow Chemical created Agent Orange. I didn't know that. So that's why it's here. And there is a lot more sites here, but you better believe I'm going to be making all of my clients aware.
You have the craziest stories of where you've lived. You've had someone who literally got shot and killed across the street from you. You had someone who was dead in your house next to you for 3 months. And then you lived in a contaminated waste site that I mean, have you done your research of the house that you're in right now?
Oh, you better believe it.
Okay.
You better believe it. That's why I didn't have my notes done for so long, because I have been down every single fucking rabbit hole, and I learned I live in like the gravel capital of the world. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Now, to lighten up the mood, it is time for our newest addition to the Forensic Files podcast called D-Squared's Spotlight Corner. This is where we will spotlight a comment from one of our listeners from our previous episodes. Now, as you all know, there can be some haters or trolleys out there that may try to bring us down, but don't you worry. When we feel it's necessary for them to be in the spotlight, we will acknowledge it, of course. But as always, we do welcome every comment or review with open arms because, hey, remember, we haven't been doing this for that long, and sometimes those comments end up not hurting us, but helping us in the long run. So make sure you leave any comment or review on any of our podcast platforms, and maybe one episode you will be involved in D-Squared's Spotlight Corner. So this week, we are spotlighting an amazing review from the user I'm Claire, though. The title was Brows, Berms, and Baffled at How, with a 5-star review. And she says, as a die-hard Forensic Files fan and unapologetic podcast addict, the fact that I didn't find this until today is insane. I was a little weary at first, but the hosts make good on their promise to laugh at themselves, never the victim or tragedy being discussed. They are always respectful, well-researched, and absolutely hilarious when they do find a window for something lighthearted. I love all the additional info in each episode. The outside info in the Stephen Robards case was fascinating. I wish there were more episodes because listening feels like hanging out with friends. And that is why we do this, people, because we want you to feel like your friend. Just that honestly, reading that made me like...
It makes all this worth it.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Like, we do have some haters out there, but who the fuck cares? Because, like, people like that just, like, that tell us, as we are, like, as you all know, like, we have been dishing out episodes this month because we want our numbers to go up so that we can keep doing this and everything. And all we needed was this little comment from I'm Claire, though, because it just made it all worth it, you know?
It did. It was really awesome. It was really awesome. And I want to invite anyone to join our Forensic Files Duo podcast discussion group on Facebook. Drew and I kind of forgot
I know
that we had one.
There's just so much that we are like, we're doing this all on our own, people. Like,
and I was like, oh my gosh, crap. We like have not talked about that discussion group. So I would welcome everyone to join that group. And I'd love to meet listeners and hear your feedback right there. Just so
and
cool.
even if you
just
are
so
angry
cool.
or like want to correct us on something, do it because we will welcome that.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we may not be right, especially me, you know.
Now for our missing person case that we would like everyone to know about.
From the Black and Missing Foundation's website is the case of Kenneth Golden. He has been missing since November 29th, 2024, from Phoenix, Arizona. He was last seen on November 29th. His age is 29. He's from Phoenix. His race is black. He has medium complexion. He's 6'2", 180 pounds. His hair color is black and short, and his eye color is brown. On November 29th, 2024, Kenneth Golden left the area of North 24th Street and West Van Buren Street in Phoenix, Arizona. His family is concerned for his welfare. If you have any information, you are asked to please contact the Phoenix Police Department at 602-534-3053 or text all capital letters BAMFI at 1-877-97-BAMFI, or you can visit www.bamfi.org. You can also submit information to the Black and Missing Foundation's tip line at blackandmissinginc.com/tipline.
We will also post the case information on our Instagram at Forensic Files Podcast, but please go and follow at Black and Missing FDN and at MMI Who Is Missing. Thank you. Okay, so our next episode. Ooh, what number will that be? 19?
Yeah, 19, and please don't be anything medical related.
Oh my god, please, no more.
No more.
I cannot add anything else to the roster of my fears. Like
Legionnaire's disease, this cancer cluster. I mean, it's just a lot. So please,
it's just, please. Season 14, episode 14 is titled Fate Date.
Something I feel like I should probably go on now.
Ooh, I think you should. Anyways, from the brief description that I read about this next episode, it sounds like we are going on a wild ride. So buckle up, Buttercup. We're going back to true crime.
Yes, thank God. If you like our podcast, please help us spread the word. Share on social media, share on Reddit, share everywhere, and drop a review to tell us what you think. And if you don't, sashay away.
Until the next one.
Bye.